What really happened just minutes before BTS got ready to head off on their big tour of the United States? Why did Jungkook, who used to smile and calm ARMY down, suddenly choose to speak in a voice that sounded different, quieter, heavier, as if he had kept something that had been buried for too long? Just 28 minutes ago, a shocking moment occurred. Jungkook finally revealed the emotional honesty that had been stuck in his chest. There was no background music, no grand stage, just simple words. Yet the effect was like a huge wave that instantly shook the hearts of everyone who heard it. I was actually scared. That sentence sounds short, but it's enough to make the atmosphere change drastically. The ARMY that watched immediately seemed to be silent. No one expected, behind the tour preparations that should be full of enthusiasm, Jungkook actually opened his fragile side. He admitted that this trip was not only about concerts and cheers, but also about the huge pressure he constantly felt. And that's where everything gets even more emotional. Taehyung, who was standing next to him from the beginning, seemed to be trying to stay calm. But as Jungkook continued, V's expression began to change. His eyes were glazed. It was as if he understood something deeper than the camera could capture. Jungkook then said quietly, "I always wanted to look strong, but sometimes I'm also human. Sometimes I get tired. Sometimes I'm afraid to disappoint you." At that moment, Taehyung couldn't hold back the tears anymore. It's not an ordinary cry. It was a cry full of emotion, like someone who has been holding back a lot of things and finally broke out when his best friend told the truth from the heart. The ARMY immediately felt something different. It's not just a sentimental moment. It feels like a confession that has been hidden behind a stage smile. Some fans are even starting to wonder, is there something bigger going on behind this tour? Is Jungkook harboring a burden he's never shown before? Why did his words sound like a small farewell? Even though he didn't say it directly, Taehyung then grabbed Jungkook by the shoulder and only said briefly, "You're not alone." That sentence is simple, but it breaks the heart of anyone who hears in an instant. This moment became one of the most emotional events before BTS began their big journey. Not because of the drama, but because of the honesty that is so human. Jungkook, the golden magne who always looks perfect, finally shows that even he has his fears, and Taehyung shows that their friendship goes much deeper than just being group mates. ARMY now can only ask inwardly, but what makes this moment even more disturbing is not only Taehyung's tears, but Jungkook's expression after seeing his best friend cry. He was silent for a few seconds, as if sorry to have opened the wound that he had been covering tightly. His eyes turned red, and for the first time, Jungkook looked completely fragile in front of everyone. "I don't want to worry you," he said softly, his voice almost trembling. "But I also can't keep pretending everything is fine." The sentence immediately hit the ARMY's heart, because so far, many have seen Jungkook as a figure who is always strong, always energetic, always the perfect cover on every stage. But now, it's like he's saying that the burden he's carrying is much heavier than it looks, and that's where the little clues start to feel scary. Jungkook then stared at Taehyung, then said something that made the atmosphere suddenly quieter. "If I look different on this tour, please don't blame anyone." Instantly, the ARMY froze. What does that mean? Why is Jungkook talking as if he is preparing everyone for something to come? His words sounded like an apology, like a last confession before a big trip. Taehyung is getting stronger. He wiped his face quickly, trying to hold back the tears, but his emotions had already broken out. He pulls Jungkook in a brief hug, a hug that looks like an attempt to say, "I'm here. I get it." And the ARMY began to feel an inexplicable tension. Social media is full of speculation. Many wondered if Jungkook was experiencing tremendous mental stress. There are also those who feel that his confession is not just about being tired, but about something more personal, something that he is not ready to reveal completely. Because Jungkook then added the most shocking sentence, "There are things that I have kept to myself for a long time, and maybe after this tour, everything will change." Boom. The sentence was like lightning in the middle of a clear sky. What will change? Is this about the future of BTS? Or about the big decision Jungkook is secretly thinking about? Taehyung could only look at her with watery eyes as if to say, "Don't talk that far, don't make ARMY even more afraid." But Jungkook only smiled a little, a smile that was not happy, but more like the smile of someone who is trying to survive. "I just want you to know, I love this show, but I also want to find myself. And that's where the ARMY really can't hold back emotions, because behind the lights, behind the grand concert, it turns out that Jungkook is struggling with his own feelings. Tonight, one thing becomes clear. This US tour is not just a musical journey. This may be BTS' biggest emotional journey, and as if the universe hadn't finished shaking ARMY's heart that night, a few minutes after the hug between Jungkook and Taehyung happened, the camera captured something that almost went unnoticed by many people. Something small, but feels like a sign. Taehyung, who is usually quick to return a smile after an emotional moment, this time kept his head down for a long time. His hands trembled subtly, and he took a deep breath as if trying to hold back something bigger than just tears, as if he knew more. And when Jungkook stepped away a little, Taehyung suddenly said quietly, almost inaudible, "Don't take it all alone anymore. I beg you." The sentence made the atmosphere heavier. The ARMY who witnessed immediately began to wonder, what had actually been going on behind the scenes all this time? Why does Taehyung sound like someone who has been worried for too long, harbored fear for too long? Then the next surprise came. Jungkook stared at the staff and other members, then said, "I don't want this tour to be a lie. I want to be honest, even if it hurts." And that's when other members who were not far away were silent. Nobody laughed. No one interrupts. Even the atmosphere seemed to stop. It was as if everyone understood that Jungkook was standing at the most fragile point in his life. Some ARMY began to speculate. Is Jungkook experiencing burnout? Has the pressure of being an idol from a young age finally really reached its peak? But what made it all even more slicing was when Jungkook added one last sentence that really panicked the ARMY. "If one day I have to stop for a while, you will understand, right?" At that moment, the world seemed to collapse. Stop? What does it mean to stop? Is Jungkook signaling a hiatus about something he never talked about? His words sounded too heavy to be considered a joke. Taehyung immediately looked at him sharply, tears still hanging in his eyes. He shook his head slowly, as if rejecting that possibility. Then Taehyung said in a broken voice, "You can't go alone." That sentence not only made Jungkook speechless, but it made ARMYs all over the world cry. Because for the first time, they see the two members' relationship is not just a stage chemistry, but a deep emotional bond, like brothers who take care of each other in the midst of the pressure of a world that never stops demanding. And after all that, Jungkook just bowed slowly, holding back tears, then said, "I just want you to know, I tried my best. No music, no dramatic effect, just raw honesty. And that is precisely what is most devastating." Now, ahead of a US tour that should have been a moment full of cheers, ARMY is instead filled with stifling questions. Is Jungkook okay? What is he really facing? And are Taehyung's tears tonight a sign that something big is approaching? One thing is certain, tonight is not just an emotional moment. This feels like the beginning of a new chapter of BTS that we have never imagined.